This video takes a look at like just how powerful political parties really are in modern times. And it's sort of like a contradiction in like the modern like time period. Interestingly enough, the actual power of Democrats and Republicans has declined. Like you wouldn't think that, like if you watch the news, because that's all people talk about are like Democrats, Democrats, Republicans, Republicans, right? And like it's interesting if you actually look at like their power compared to like 100 years ago, like the individual parties themselves are actually like weakened, which again you wouldn't think if you watch the news. Like why? Why are political parties like less powerful than they used to be? Well, like number one, candidates don't really depend on the parties to like raise their money anymore. Right? That used to be a thing like 100 years ago. Like you were completely dependent upon like the parties for like your party for like your campaign funds. Like candidates raise all their own money now, right? So like they don't have to rely on the parties themselves for like financial support. Secondly, like media and interest groups have become super influential in the last like 50 years, right? Maybe last like 25 years. And you know where it used to be like the political parties that really had the most influence over the citizens, you could argue that like the media and interest groups actually have filled a lot of like that role. That like media has become much more influential in influencing political thought. Interest groups are playing by considerably less rules than the political parties in their ability to influence politics. So you can actually argue that those two groups have become more powerful, and it has taken some of the power away from the actual organized political parties. Also, like elections and like social services have very much changed. Like, what does that mean? So first, like ballot printing, like counting of ballots, all of that now is handled by like independent like government agencies. Like that used to be done by the political parties, which probably didn't ever make sense to have them do that kind of stuff. But like that's stuff that they used to do that has been like taken away from them. Also, like you think about like social services kind of stuff, right? Um, like Roosevelt's like New Deal, the government, his program to get the country out of the depression, put like social services in the hands of like government agencies, not like political parties. It used to be like political parties that would help out with the unemployed, help out with people that were like in need of like food, right? Like that's the way that they would win votes, by providing aid to like citizens. Like that's not really done by the political parties anymore. That's done by like government agencies, right? So like that has changed. And then like the idea of like the direct primary, it used to be that the political parties themselves would just like decide who was going to be like the candidate, right? But now like we let the voters decide, so that's taken power away from the parties and like giving it to the voters. Like the parties aren't just choosing who is going to be your presidential candidate versus the other party's presidential candidate. Like you're going through this primary process that we've talked about, where like the citizens have like a lot of impact. And then like civil service laws, we talked about the idea of like, you know, it used to be that, you know, a president or party leaders would just give jobs in the government to their supporters. Well, like things like the Pendleton Act in the 1800s changed that, where now a lot of these government jobs are based on merit, and you can't give jobs to your party supporters. And then also things like, you know, we're focusing less on the issues the candidates are running on and more just about their personalities and they themselves. There's less talk about the party and there's more talk about the candidates as individuals. Right? So like these are all sort of examples of how like the parties have become like weakened if you look at them compared to like parties from 100 years ago. But the irony and the contradiction is that they, despite the fact they're probably less powerful in terms of actual stuff they can do, they've become a bit more powerful in the fact that they've continually polarized American citizens in like the modern era. We've talked about this a lot. So like, though on one hand you could argue they're less powerful, on the other hand, like they're actually pretty good at like sort of like pitting the citizens against each other. It's because they're constantly focusing on issues that we call wedge issues. A wedge issue is an issue that the political parties like, definitely disagree on: immigration, abortion, gun control. Like there are lots of issues that political parties are in some agreement on, but like you're conditioned to think that it's like us versus them. And that's because you tend to just hear about the issues that there's like no agreement on between the parties, and that's because that's what they're pushing that out there. Right. Again, we talked about the idea of like direct primaries and how citizens like get to choose, but like very few citizens actually like participate. Right. Um, that you have less citizens, less party members that vote in the primaries. The people that are more likely to vote in the primaries are the most like extreme members of your party, which are leading to like very extreme candidates that are running. We talked about earlier in the year, there's less campaign finance reform, the idea of like gerrymandering. Uh, Parties are drawing the congressional districts in a way that you're giving a huge advantage, right, to like one party or the other in a district. Again, like the media has become much more antagonistic. They cater to the individual ideologies, and there really aren't any viable third party options. So you have to join one or the other if you want to have like political influence. So on one hand, parties have actually become less powerful. On the other hand, they figure out a way to increasingly sort of like polarize and divide the citizens.